What's up guys, in this video we're going to be looking at VRAM 4, 6, and 8 gigs to see how it compares and why you probably shouldn't use auto VRAM. We're also going to be looking at TSR, FSR, and XeSS on various settings. Then we're going to look at frame gen on various settings as well, off versus on. And last but not least, we're going to look at some gameplay footage just to see how it runs in the settings I use. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now when we take a look at VRAM, it's going to matter what resolution and textures you're running. So here we're at 1080p medium, which 1080p is going to use a bit more VRAM, and then medium is going to use a bit more than low, and the high is going to use even more, as we'll see here in just a minute. But we have 4 gigs of VRAM on the left, 6 gigs in the middle, and 8 gigs off to the right. And you can see Oblivion is not the best at actually utilizing that full amount of VRAM. We're only at about 6.7 over here when it has 8 available. 5.4 here, and it's only using 3 gigs over here when we have 4. So kind of strange, but here we can see we get the most stuttering over here on 4 gigs. I really wouldn't recommend playing the game at 4 gigs. I think 6 is decent, but still is stuttering more than 8 gigs. Right here we got a massive slowdown. If you look at this frame time graph, we'll rewind it a little bit. You can see here, these are freezing pretty much, and then 8 gigs, just a little bit, and it just goes right through. Also about 2 additional FPS for the average there at 8 gigs. Now here we're running high settings, so this is not an FPS that you're really going to play at, but I just wanted to show you, we're going to get a lot more stuttering here at high, even on 6 gigs, but especially 4. If you look at 4, it is stuttering almost non-stop, and over here on 8, still pretty smooth, but even 8, we get a bit of stuttering right there, and we're only in the 20-ish FPS range, very low 20s. We got about 19, 21, and 22. Now I think this is going to be the settings. So here we have bumped the settings down to medium and the resolution down to 900p. So this is not using as much VRAM, and you can see right here, much smoother on even 6 gigs. We'll fast forward a little, and you can see over here on 4, it's still having some problems, but 6 is doing really well, and 8's doing even better. Now here we are on auto VRAM 1080p, and this is low settings. We're not even using medium or high, and you can see the frame time graph here where these little spikes are. It is constantly stuttering. So fast forward a bit, just look at all those spikes. You can see here it's showing about 300 megabytes assigned to the GPU. And it is using a lot of system RAM. 14 gigs of system RAM is being used, but this really is not playable, so I don't recommend auto VRAM. So now let's move on to TSR. On the left, we've got FSR Balanced in the middle, and Intel's XeSS on balance as well, off to the right. And it might look close here, but let's go ahead and just zoom in a little bit, and you can see the clearest one right here without movement is TSR, but we're going to be running around, so I'm going to go ahead and do that test, and I'm trying to aim for this little circle here just so I can get these lined up, and we're going to go ahead and zoom in and then freeze it. You can see right here on balance, I think this looks the best. XeSS is very close, so we'll just go a little bit further. You can see it's just a bit clearer on balanced, and then TSR is the blurriest of the bunch, and with YouTube's compression you might not see this, but I'm viewing the media directly so I can see it pretty clearly, and we'll go ahead and just run a little bit further. Let's fast forward, and the other thing to note is right here, we're at about almost 40 FPS with TSR, about 34 FSR balanced, and then 37 with XeSS. So XeSS is getting a little bit more FPS. So here we are, same thing, 900p medium settings, but I wanted to test out FSR Performance. And you can see here, they're performing very closely, and we're gonna freeze again. So we'll go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to rewind a little bit, get these lined up, and here we go. We got balanced on the left, and I think it does look just a little bit clearer, especially as we approach a little bit closer. Performance is a bit blurrier, and XeSS, I would say, is the blurriest one. It actually looks a little bit blurrier than Performance over here. FSR Balanced obviously being the best. And you can see we're getting 37 FPS on FSR Performance and XeSS, so these are very close. And let's just rewind one more time, take a look at this building, and honestly, Performance, I would say, is just slightly clear, so that is probably the one to use. And you'll see here in a second when we go to frame generation, that's where it's really going to matter. Now, this is an additional test that I wanted to throw in. We've got FSR Ultra Performance here, FSR Performance, and FSR Balance, just to see the difference. This is all going to be at 900p medium settings. And I'm going to go back to the beginning here and just zoom in so we can see this sign right here, and you can see it's just a bit clearer as we go to the right. The other thing that matters is FPS. So here we are on ultra performance, getting about 43, and then 35 on performance and 31 on balance. So it just gives you an idea. We really do get a nice bump going to ultra performance, but this looks absolutely terrible in my opinion. So if we rewind that just a little bit, we're going to zoom back in. Just take a look at the trees. It's almost like leaves look like they're disappearing and reappearing. It looks really bad. So I wouldn't really recommend that. I think I would stick to performance or balanced. And just for fun, here we have FSR Quality. We're going to zoom in here and then native AA. So it's still FSR, native AA, and you can see that's quite a bit clearer, but we are only getting 18 FPS. So that is not something you're really going to be able to use. So here at the end of the test, you can see we got 18 over here on native and 28 over here on quality. Now running the same route with frame generation off versus on makes a huge difference. And you can see we're on FSR quality here and we're getting 48 FPS over with frame generation and only 28 over here. And the frame time graph is actually a bit smoother. I kind of still notice some jittering. I don't know if it's picking it up here properly, but it is a bit smoother than over here. And that is a big bump, 20 additional FPS. It works really well on Oblivion to use frame gen. And then here, all I've done is knocked the FSR from quality down to balanced just to see what kind of frame rate we get. So we got frame gen on the right, it's off on the left, and it looks like, we'll fast forward a little bit, but it's about a 20-21 FPS difference. And we didn't get that much more. So with frame gen on, when we're on quality, we got about 48. And we're only at about 52 here. And then bumping FSR down to performance. So we did quality, then we did balance, and now we're on performance. We actually do see a decent increase. It's not huge, but we're at about 58. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward to this benchmark. You can see we got right at 58. So that is 10 more than when we were on quality. Then the last thing I wanted to test here is wattage. So we got 15 watts, medium settings. We're using FSR Balanced, and we have 720p over here on the left, 900p in the middle, 1080p off to the right. And this game does not like 15 watts as much. You're going to see some weird slowdowns and stuttering across the board here. It's just random. You can see over here at 720 some major stutters. So I wouldn't recommend this wattage. Now bumping it up to 18, we are seeing a decent improvement. And keep in mind, this is with frame generation off. So if you have frame gen on and you can tolerate the additional input lag, then you're going to get quite a bit more FPS, about double. And here at 720p, we're now in the mid 30s, almost 30 at 900p, and then 23 FPS at 1080. And if you look right here, you can see we are still getting massive stuttering. You can see it right there. And it's just random. It still doesn't like 18 watts. So let's go ahead and bump it to 30. All right, and here we are at 30 watts. This is where it's going to make a difference. This is what I recommend running the game at. We're at 40 FPS on 720p, 32 at 900p, about 26 at 1080. But the most important thing right here is the frame time graph. Look how smooth that is. It is running a lot better at 30 watts. We still get some spikes and slowdowns, but they're not nearly as bad as at lower wattages. They go by pretty quickly, so I definitely recommend 30 watts on this game. All right, and then last thing I want to show y'all is just some handheld gameplay here. This is at 900p with frame generation on, medium settings, and we're using FSR Balance, which is what it defaults to anyway. And overall, getting almost 60 FPS. We'll go ahead and fast forward, and let's go ahead and go inside and actually get into some combat. This is just the first gate. So here overall, the frame time graph is staying pretty smooth. Now, there are random stutters when you loot enemies and other points in the map, but overall, it runs really well. There is latency with frame generation though, and it makes it somewhat hard to play. So if you're sensitive to latency, you will notice it. If you're not, you will enjoy the higher FPS, and it really is amazing. It works really well. So if you like frame gen on, I definitely would leave it on. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope y'all enjoyed the comparison, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.